Today, we're going to talk about a man who was, at the same time, one of the most powerful and one of the most invisible figures on the entire planet, the drug lord known as El Mencho. This is a guy who built a global empire while basically remaining a complete phantom. I mean, just think about that for a second. For a decade and a half, you have the combined power of multiple countries' intelligence agencies, a multi-million-dollar bounty on his head, and they just couldn't find him. He was a whisper, a ghost, who was commanding one of the deadliest criminal organizations in the world. So how does that even happen? How does someone go from farming avocados to being public enemy number one? That's the rabbit hole we're going down today. His story, it's not some simple rise to power. It's this calculated, methodical journey from absolute poverty to unimaginable influence. And to really get it, we're going to start at the end. Right. To truly understand the life of this ghost, we have to start with his death, because on February 22nd, 2026, after years and years of eluding capture, the hunt finally came to a very violent end. A guy this powerful finally getting taken down, yeah, that sends some serious shockwaves. But the real story, the thing that explains why his death was such a huge deal, is in the life he lived. To get why his death unleashed so much chaos, you first have to understand the empire he built. Pretty much from nothing. Okay, so let's rewind. Let's go all the way back to the beginning. His journey doesn't start in some corporate boardroom or a military barracks. No, it starts in the dirt of a rural Mexican farm. The path his early life took is just staggering. He starts out as a poor farmer's son, crosses into the U.S. illegally, gets sucked into the drug trade, and even ends up in a U.S. prison. But it's that last point, that last bullet point, that changes everything. After he gets deported back to Mexico, he becomes a police officer. It sounds almost unbelievable, right? But that move was the key to everything that came next. You see, his time as a cop wasn't just some weird detour on his resume. It was his education. It was like he got a PhD in counter-narcotics, but from the inside. He learned how investigations work, how raids get planned, and most importantly, he learned exactly how to exploit the weaknesses of the very same authorities who would one day make him their number one target. So now he's got this totally unique insider knowledge. Plus, he makes a strategic marriage into a powerful crime family, and suddenly, El Mencho is in the absolute perfect position. As the old cartels started to fall apart, he was right there, ready to build something new and terrifying from the ashes. And he didn't just try to, grab a slice of the pie. No. He declared all-out war on the most feared group in all of Mexico, the Zetas. He literally called his faction the Zeta Killers. It was an incredibly gutsy bet, because if you can defeat the one group that everyone else is terrified of, you become the new definition of terror. And it worked. Out of that war, the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, the CJNG, was born. And the empire he built? Well, it was massive. At its peak, we're talking an estimated value of $20 billion. That's a number that's bigger than the entire economy of some small countries, all controlled by one guy operating from the shadows. His control over the market was just unreal. The DEA figured that the CJNG was responsible for a full third of all drugs coming into the United States from Mexico by air and sea. That's an absolutely staggering level of control over a global supply chain. And this is maybe the smartest thing he did. He didn't run it like a typical street gang. Nope. He structured the CJNG like a multinational corporation, like a franchise business, with around 90 separate but connected organizations all under his command. This wasn't just for growth. It was the key to making his empire almost impossible to kill. And that right there, that's the key difference. You think of guys like El Chapo, right? Doing interviews, flaunting gold-plated cars and private zoos. El Mencho did the exact opposite. He embraced being invisible. He built a $20 billion empire, and his main passion was supposedly cockfighting. That extreme low profile wasn't just a personality quirk. It was his greatest weapon. It made him a true ghost. But even a ghost has to make some noise eventually. And in 2015, the CJNG did something so incredibly bold, so violent, that it announced their arrival on the world stage in a way that nobody could possibly ignore. In Jalisco, May of 2015. This is the moment everything flips. This is when El Mencho's cartel went from being a crime problem to a full-blown national security threat. They shot down a military helicopter with a rocket-propelled grenade. I mean, let that sink in. This wasn't just some shootout on a back road. This was a paramilitary force taking on the Mexican military with military-grade weapons. It was a declaration of war, and it showed a level of firepower that just shocked everyone. So after that helicopter attack, the hunt for El Mencho just went into overdrive. I mean, it became an obsession. And yet, for years, he just stayed a phantom, running his entire empire from the shadows right up until the very end. And then he was finally cornered, not in some huge fortified mansion, but in a small mountain town known for its pine forests. The ghost was finally brought down in a firefight so intense it left members of the military wounded. But his death, it didn't bring peace, not even close. Within hours, his organization just unleashed total coordinated chaos all across Mexico, burning cars, road blockades, security alerts. This wasn't just a disorganized lashing out, it was a clear demonstration of power, proving that the monster El Mencho created was still very, very much alive. And this assessment from the DEA, man, it just hits the nail on the head. Remember that franchise model we were talking about? This is why it was so brilliant, in a terrifying way. El Mencho designed the CJNG to survive without him. It's not a pyramid where you can just take out the guy at the top. It's a network. It's a hydra. You cut off the head, and the body just keeps fighting. So that's where we're left, with this really unsettling question at the end of it all. They got the ghost, they finally caught the man who built the empire. But the empire itself, this massive, decentralized machine built for violence and profit, it's still there, fully operational. The man is gone, but the system he perfected is very much alive. So how in the world do you kill an empire?